Cars working their way around the course for the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, approaching the first green flag of the 2015 Verizon IndyCar Series season. Got some great onboard views to take you through this course today. James Jakes back in the series this year, carrying our media tech on board. Rookie Sage Karam after his spectacular debut at the Brickyard last May as our Firestone on board. James Hinch, the Lucas Oil camera. Graham Rahal has our Clearplex on board. And Charlie Kimball has the Norvo Nordisk onboard camera. Talked about Marco Andretti. He's got the Mutual of Omaha on board today. Ryan Hunter-Ray is carrying our AutoNation camera. Tony Kanaan with the NTT data on board. Simon Pagenaud now with Team Penske carrying a Verizon on board, and on pole, the champion of a year ago and the winner of this race a year ago, Will Power, with a Verizon onboard camera. And the field being led around by the Honda two-seater. Enter at shophonda.com for a chance to start a Verizon IndyCar Series race in the Honda two-seat IndyCar driven by Mario Andretti. Mark Wilson is on board today with Mario. I'd like to be on the track with Mario when the green flag waves. I know you guys want to be driving yourself. I'd rather have Mario driving me.
Well, the question is, would you sit in the back seat with Mario driving? Because
without question.
Without question.
For the two of you.
And if you're looking for Spanish language commentary for today's broadcast, activate your SAP button. It's presented by ESPN Deportes. So 110 laps is the distance today, 1.8 mile circuit, just a little under 200 miles. And there have been 10 previous races here at St. Petersburg, and 5 of them have had cautions on lap 1. So a 50% chance, if you like to explain things in that way, that we're going to see the yellow flag before they finish a lap. And a lot of that chance happens in turn 1.
It's a very tricky corner, and with the braking distances haven't been shortened here, all this new downforce they have on the car, I think it's going to be even more difficult to pass her than it was in the past.
Well, you can see all the marks on there, and because it's an airport, sometimes people get it wrong. This is the escape road that drivers can come down and get their cars turned around and rejoin into the race. But you obviously don't want to end up there, but I assure you, throughout the day here, we'll probably see somebody down there at some point in time.
Here they come. Will Power, the black and white number 1, to driver's right, leading the field to the first green flag of the season. We're underway in St. Pete. That's Hunter-Ray that overshoots.
They all make it through. A lot of guys trying to take advantage of the start of a race when everybody's packed up to try to get past the car in front.
Graham Rahal with a move in the orange car, and now double wide behind. Now, when they come back around to this front stretch, there was contact on the initial start. One of those little winglets we showed you looked to me like off one of the Chevrolet cars, wound up bouncing around the track somewhere. Be curious to see if we can track down. You see one of the cars might have just hit it right there. Be curious to see who it might have come off of. And there's another piece at the exit of turn number 9. That might look like one of those rear wing or side flaps that are on one of the cars.
On that part of the track, Scott, they were 3 abreast. To put it in perspective, we're running downtown St. Petersburg. There really isn't that much room. There's a lot of souvenirs that we're creating for the spectators.
And there's the piece that looks to be on the front stretch right there, but it's interesting to me that everybody is starting to really get excited here because you've been out of a car for so long, and that looks like it's definitely one of the Chevrolet pieces that attaches to the outside of the wing.
Yeah, that's the piece that Alan was talking about. I talked to one of the Foyt engineers, and he said that you don't really lose that much with that front piece.
Just watching the cars come through here to see if we can see who some of that might have come off of. As they got really jammed up on the initial start. I counted 5 wide at one point on the run down the runway. Here's one of the Hondas missing a left front piece. Is that Hawksworth in the 41? It is.
Yes. Well, that's more damage than just that one piece.
Yeah, that'll definitely change the handling characteristics of the car. We talked about with many people that this could turn out to be an event where the safety crew, that you can see them right there, the Home Ultra crew, having to pick up a lot of pieces of debris from the cars if they actually start to do some bumping. We've already seen that, Eddie.
And the problem we have here is that these pieces came very late and they don't have that many spares. So he has one more spare, I believe, to go on if it happens again. He's got to go back he'll have to go back to the old bodywork.
So that lap 1 caution trend
is intact.
Make that 6 out of 11 in this race. And there again, that's one of those uprights from the front wing of one of the Chevrolets. And when they first dropped the green flag and they fanned out back in the pack, I saw that come bouncing off one of the cars. So somebody making a move to avoid somebody else or pull out and try and pass and mistimed it a little bit and clipped somebody else. There's Hawksworth in for some damage. Rick?
Yeah, Jack Hawksworth bringing it in. Very frustrating weekend for these guys. On Friday, Hawksworth was very fast, felt very good about it. Yesterday, they struggled. So as a result, they were having to make some big changes. Felt pretty good. Remember, the teammate is Takuma Sato, who is the top qualifying Honda. Now you see him having to change that wing, missing that left front section. They actually had to run down to Sato's pit to get that wing. Now they're piecing it back on. It doesn't take a lot of time when you think about the fact you're changing the front section of the bodywork, but it seems like an eternity when you're stuck here in the pits. Think about this. One of those new front wings cost between $18,000 and $20,000.
So, description of lap 1, expensive. Not as expensive as some we've seen here in the past at St.
We've seen cars go upside down.
But expensive for some teams. So an early yellow for contact and debris scattered in 3 different places on the track, and the pace car is leading the early laps of this one. Early caution in the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, season opener for the Verizon IndyCar Series. Debris in 3 different places on the track after contact between cars on the initial green flag. Quick reminder about some upcoming motorsports on the ESPN ABC family of networks. The SummitRacing.com NHRA Nationals from Las Vegas can be seen in a couple of weeks, qualifying April 11th, 6 Eastern ESPN2, with final eliminations on April 12th at 8 Eastern, also on ESPN2. And for the Verizon IndyCar Series, after a week off next week, race 2 is that much anticipated debut in New Orleans at the NOLA Motorsports Park, the Indy Grand Prix of Louisiana, April 12th, 3 Eastern. See that brought to you by our friends over at NBC SN. So getting the 1-to-go signal here, and we'll go back racing after an early 4-lap caution. And to say that there were some bits and pieces scattered around on the opening lap would be a fair assessment. Watch.
What happened in the back?
Yeah, matter of fact, the car on the right,
is that Filippi?
Filippi, I believe, ends up hitting it. You can see how far this stuff just flies through the air. He really dove down there into turn 1, but there was already some contact because some of the cars in front of him were already hitting some of the debris and knocking it over to the left also.
That's another look at the front of that car. He might be missing both of the front winglets. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so Luca Filippi driving for the newly combined CFH team, missing both of those end plates on the front wings. Jan, got more on that?
Yes, I do. You may remember if you saw the pre-race feature about the aero kits, those little pieces that are missing have the same effect on the front of the car as they do the rear. So the teams believe it won't change the balance. But he won't, for Luca Filippi, he won't be quite as fast, but he will not have to come onto pit road and get a wing change, although they're preparing one just in case.
Well, and you saw on the left front part of that wing also, Jan, that it looks like the wing has actually been damaged because it seems to be flapping just a small amount. If it stays like that, not a problem, but it could disintegrate as he continues to run.
Base cars off. Will Power, Elio Castroneves, Simon Pagenaud, Takuma Sato, and Juan Pablo Montoya, the front 5.
Watch Sato here.
Under attack and gives up a spot to Montoya.
So the Penskes are now 1, 2, 3, and 4 again.
Bourdais with a move to the inside of Kanaan. So that puts puts Sebastian Bourdais up into 6th position.
Through the very fast left-hand kink on the run down to turn 10. Another bumpy section here.
Marco Andretti with a little slide under braking.
It's what we call the most important turn here, guys. If you can get close to the guy that's in front of you, get a good run out of the turn, out of 14, coming down the straight, that's a great opportunity to pass going into turn 1.
The willpower has started pulling away.
You can see how bumpy it is here for the drivers, especially, whoa, some contact right there.
Big move to the inside. That was Stefano Coletti, I believe, trying to make a move.
Just a little bit of contact with the 83 of Charlie Kimball. Now Charlie's going to go back after it. Remember, if you just ease up a little bit too soon in the braking zones, the drivers behind you will take advantage of it.
Another driver that's doing quite well is Andretti at this point.
So riding bar along with Charlie Kimball, you can see how quickly you get going up through here, and we take a left-hand turn on Dan Weldon Way, go through this very fast chicane into turns 13 and 14.
So Penske, the first 4 spots. As you see some of the field come cycling through. And then back to Hawksworth after the wing change, and Hawksworth all the way back in 21st place. Of course, Hawksworth really made a splash in this series a year ago. This race, driving for Brian Herta Autosport at that time, made a spectacular drive, had a chance for a great finish, then had some things go wrong toward the end of the race, but has taken that rookie promise now into an opportunity with AJ Foyt Racing to expand to a second car.
And he needs results. There's not that much pressure on him. There's a lot less pressure on him than there is on Sato, but he needs to start racking up those points.
And they're looking at him as a guy for down the road because he's so young. He has the opportunity to learn here when you've got an experienced driver on the team like Takuma Sato. So all the drivers will retire at some point in time. You want to work on your younger drivers as soon as you can to get them into the system. Rick DeBrule.
Well, you have to understand that Jack Hawksworth really knows this track well. He won here twice in Pro Mazda. He won here once in Indy Light. If there's a track that a driver has to make up time on, this is where Jack Hawksworth wants to do it. Now, I mentioned the fact that on Friday, he was relatively quick and had a horrible Saturday. Originally, they thought something was broken. They ended up managing to dial everything back to where they thought it was supposed to be, similar to a Sato setup, and they were sending him back out with much higher hopes today, but obviously you can see how he's been set back.
So Jack Hawksworth running in 21st place, part of a group there, a trio that includes a couple of new guys in new places. Just in front of him is Gabby Chavez in the 98, the 21-year-old, formerly of Columbia, now living in Indianapolis. He has replaced Hawksworth with the Brian Herta Autosport team. And in front of Chavez is James Jakes in the 7, Sam Smith Racing. He has come back to the series after a year away, Jakes has, and filled the seat vacated by Mikel Aloshin, who has gone back to race overseas.
And we talked about this before. Very talented driver when he ran with Ray Hall, and he was out there qualifying well, finishing well, but when you take a year off, Eddie, and you understand this all the time, it's tough to come back and expect to be right back on pace. It's going to take him a few races into the season before he can expect to have himself back up there.
But when you're in that position, the most important thing you can do is finish every lap that you are on. It's as long as you get miles, you'll be better off the next time you get in the car, but the worst thing you can do is to get caught up in an accident. And Power continues to extend his lead over Castroneves. It's now 2.7 seconds.
Good little dogfight here. Scott Dixon in the 9 trying to hold off Graham Rahal in the 15. This is for 10th and 11th. Rahal was quite quick in the morning warm-up at noontime today. We'll still call it a morning warm-up, won't we? You won't chastise me for that? But Rahal was running the red tires. New to IndyCar racing, the 2 tire combinations. The black sidewall tires are what they call the primary tire, and the red sidewall tire, the alternate tire, a little bit softer in compound. They'll be faster for a while, but they'll give up more quickly.
They're supposed to give up on that last third of your full tank run, but let's remember that Rahal won this race, so if he can get a car under him that is consistent, he should be able to work his way up to the front.
They're running right behind Marco Andretti in that yellow 27. So that for 9th, 10th, and 11th. Up front, Will Power won this race a year ago, went on to win the series championship for the first time. Won pole on qualifying yesterday afternoon, and he has led every lap so far, but we're still very early in the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Early in the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, season opener for the Verizon IndyCar Series, downtown St. Petersburg, Florida. Will Power is the race leader. Team Penske cars, 4 entries in the race. They're running 1, 2, 3, and 4. You look at the running order coming across the top of your screen. You're watching the race from 9th on back. Marco Andretti, yellow 27. Scott Dixon, red 9. Graham Rahal, orange 15. 9, 10, and 11.
You know, this is a group of cars that know they don't have the speed to be able to compete with the Penske cars, so I think what they're doing right now is they've turned back their fuel mixture. They're running a little bit lean, as we call it, trying to get some better fuel mileage and just put down some laps, and hopefully the race turns in their favor, because the lap times that they're running right now just a little slower than what we're seeing running up front. So, you know, maybe that's their plan.
I don't know about Rahal. He looks like he's very busy and he's trying to get ahead of Dixon. I think Dixon would like very much to shake him off, but it doesn't look like Marco Andretti is slowing Dixon down. So they're it's a strange battle here. I would almost give Rahal the advantage out of these 2 cars that are ahead of him, which is good to see. I love to see him do well here.
Check out our Honda telemetry on Graham Rahal's car. Watch the miles per hour. Remember, these are city streets that are on right here. And watch on this next run up the Oceanside Street, Bayshore Avenue, how fast they go on a city street.
And there's no margin for error. Look how it goes down from 152 to 60, 59.
Up along the marina, onto the runway at Albert Woodard Airport.
So important to exit that corner.
Say the same thing. You got to time it right and get that run going down the straight if you want a shot at getting into a draft and passing the car in front of you. Now we have to push the pass, where you have the opportunity to push the button on your steering wheel and get an extra boost of power. That these drivers have 10 applications and it lasts for 15 seconds. Too early in the race to use it right now. As we see Dixon just putting his nose in there, just letting Marco know that he's back there.
Oh, Marco knows.
Into the parking lot of Al Lang Stadium, spring training home for baseball teams for many years, no longer used for that. Now onto Central and back onto Bayshore.
He's gaining a lot of time turning into these slower corners.
Carlos Huertas has come down pit road. Last year, the first pit stops in this race happened on lap 14. It's when the pit window opened. Now, we had the early full course yellow, but we are beginning to be in the window where we can see the first of the fuel strategies played out.
Another guy that's starting to join this group right now is Stefano Coletti. And you can see that he's now just starting to come up behind Graham Rahal. The driver that's now running 12th, started 17th. Very interesting. When I first met him at the Barber test, that was over in Birmingham, Alabama, all the drivers had an opportunity to do some testing on their equipment before we came to the first race here. Been running in Europe, had only been to the United States just a couple of times when he was running in Formula BMW. He's been running in Europe and winning over there. 25 years of age, will be 26 next month. But he's moved over to Indianapolis, doesn't know anybody, but it shows his commitment to motor racing. He's going to move here, get to know the team, and you know something, he's doing a very, very good job.
And they must have something in their family that's genetically aimed at speed. His sister is an Olympic downhill skier. In both, just imagine that. Both of them doing something like one racing, the other one is skiing.
I saw that.
Coletti from Monaco, driving for the KVRT team. 8 wins in 90 races in the last 4 years in the GP2 series. So an accomplished driver over there, and now taking his crack at the Verizon IndyCar Series.
For those that don't know it, the GP2 series is the feeder series into Formula One.
Update on the 4 from Rick.
Talk about the fact that his strategy has changed because he's doing well in this race. They were originally going to have him come in about lap 14 for an early pit stop, but as a result, they decided to leave him out there because he's doing so well. Doc?
Hinchcliffe in for a pit stop, front wing change, air pressure change. They went from the primary to the red tires. Hinchcliffe's got his hands full, car sliding, concerned about some rear tire wear because of the sliding of the car. The first of the contender cars to make a stop.
Getting to see some other teams starting to lay out the tires on the pit lane. Looks like we'll see Sebastian Bourdais in momentarily in the 11. Bourdais running 6th at the moment. Mentioned the tires. I described the tires earlier as a refresher. First race of the new season. Just the button on that rule is you have to run each of the compounds a minimum of 2 laps in the race. So you can run the Reds all race, but for one stint, at least for 2 laps, you have to put the primary tires on. See more crews laying out the tires here.
So if you consider the fact that Coletti is not on Reds, he's doing very well.
Okay,
Here's Ryan Hunter-Reay in. Doc?
2.
Ryan Hunter-Reay, the defending Indy 500 winner. Boy, what a handful this car's been all weekend. Andretti, he told me this morning, said we are not where we need to be. We have some serious handling issues, and they made a ride height change this morning, helped a little bit. Now a 4-tire change. He goes to the primary, the black tires, on his first stop.
And it was Carlos Munoz who was in behind Hunter-Reay. That was Munoz's crew in the pit lane, not Bourdais, as I said a minute ago. Apologize for that.
That's one of the most difficult moments you can have when you're leaving the track on that in corners 2 and 3 with cold tires, Scott.
Oh, we've seen some past champions, Indy 500 winners come out of there and pancake the wall, as we call it, with a very embarrassing moment. But you're absolutely right, trying to tame the 700 horsepower that's in these cars.
And until those tires get the right temperature, they don't have any grip.
Don't know about you, but I'm really happy to see that Team Penske and Will Power and their sponsors and so on carry on that open wheel tradition of using number 1 for the series champion. To Jan.
Luca Filippi is making his stop, and again, they will assess that front wing to see if they want to go for it. Very unlikely they would do that under green. See, they cranked some more in. They've lost some flaps, so you can add some with the adjuster. So Luca Filippi trying to make the best of a little less front downforce.
Remember, he was involved in that front straightaway at the green flag contact that knocked some of those bits and pieces off the front wing of the 20 car. It's still the best fight for position on the racetrack. Marco Andretti separated a little bit, but from Scott Dixon in 10th on back, they're packed up there.
Well, Marco's trying just to get a little bit of a run because he knows that pit stops are coming up, so if he can get just a bit of an advantage.
He's in the pits.
And here he comes right now. He wants to be just ahead of those guys before he gets in.
Andretti carrying number 27 this year instead of 25.
No wing, 4 tires, full set of fuel. Tires, brand new.
And when they talk about brand new tires, they always tell the drivers that, because when you're on sticker tires and you leave the pits, the car has a much different characteristic. So no changes other than those sticker tires. Marco Andretti did long runs today. That's 7.8 for his pit stop. He said, we are focusing on long runs on those primary blacks. This is where he needs it to pay.
Oh, and you see the competitors coming out just in front of him when he was going down pit lane, ready to exit. If you noticed a blue flashing light that was the left-hand side, that's to alert drivers that somebody's coming out of turn 1, and they may meet up with each other when he gets back onto the race surface. So a good indication for him, and he probably knew just to keep an eye to the left to make sure you don't end up running into someone.
Now we'll see if Dixon can pull away a little bit from Rahal, but I don't think he'll be able to. It looks like Rahal has got a good car underneath him today.
A lot of changes on Graham's team since last year. Bobby said he had to get in there. His father, Bobby Rahal, who is the team owner, as you see Graham Rahal closing up to Scott Dixon under braking. They said they need to go in there and give him a package that he could go out and be competitive with. Graham's worked hard in the off-season throughout this winter training. Some new engineering and some new blood in there, and maybe a renewed focus for Graham Rahal, which is something that he probably needed, because when your season's not going well, Eddie, and you understand this, you sort of get behind the 8 ball just a little bit, and you lose that desire to drive at 110%. A lot of people thought that maybe Graham had that in him last year, but now results have to be there. They need to get back up front and get that Rahal name back in the winner's circle.
He is brilliant under braking and turning into the corners. He's gaining so much time on Dixon. Dixon might be in a fuel save mode, but just watch him under braking, how much he gains.
Well, that's how Dixon saves fuel also. You remember, he's the one that they always say makes fuel. He drives a race car and his fuel numbers are better than anybody else, can generally get another lap over the other competitors, is because he goes in, he eases off the gas just a little sooner, but he rolls his speed through the center of the turn. Now, he knows that with Graham Rahal closing up in the center of the turn, what they call the apex, that Graham's not going to be able to pass him. So it's a brilliant move by Dixon, knowing he has the opportunity just to keep him behind there.
That's a
Contact, Munoz 26.
and more souvenirs.
and Simona Di Silvestro, who's actually with the Andretti Autosport team. Oh, there you go.
Now, Simona had just come off the pit lane. Remember you talked about how tricky those tires can be when you just come off the pit lane?
Yeah, you know, and that's something you just want to wait until Simona's going down the next stretch to have an opportunity, you know, and that's between 3 team cars that were right there.
So Munoz back on the pit lane to address the damage.
That was uncalled for.
Also on the pit lane, the race leader, Will Power's in. Castroneves is also in. Leader's pit stop. Doc?
Will Power, no complaints whatsoever. Said he's going to actually cut back on fuel to save fuel. And they're going to put 4 tires on Blackwell. Helio Castroneves, on the other hand, so the car's gotten very, very loose. They were going to make an adjustment. He has also gone to the primary black tires and filled it up with fuel.
That was a good move by the pit crew with Juan Pablo, and making sure he didn't drive out of his pit box. Doc?
Here's Scott Dixon. You guys were exactly right. He was in a fuel conserving mode, but also the car's been very neutral, in fact a little bit loose, so he's had an oversteer, not been able to get the power down. So now they've come in to make a pit stop, and
something's wrong.
They've got an issue with the left rear tire and trying to be able to get the tire off the car. So a serious issue here under yellow for the 9 car of Scott Dixon.
Good, clear, clear, clear.
Well, that's going to cost him a lot of ground, and we'll see how much after the pit stop cycle out. Here's Sebastian Bourdais. Jan?
The reason that the leaders are taking this opportunity to pit is there was a call that went down up and down pit road, possible caution. That's why they dove in. They don't need necessarily all the fuel now or tires, but you have to protect yourself in case they go to a full course caution because they close the pits. Charlie Kimball also getting service and making sure he doesn't get caught out by a caution.
So Simon Pagenaud is now the race leader, not having made a pit stop yet. Then Josef Newgarden is second. And then Will Power now running third after almost everyone has cycled on and off the pit lane.
Maybe Pagenaud at this point is on a different fuel strategy. If he doesn't come in soon, he's in the pit. No, yes.
There's the pit road speed begin line. And Pagenaud has the first pit stall. Rick?
The original plan was to bring Simon Pagenaud in on lap 27. Obviously, as a result of this, they've decided to bring him in just a couple laps early. The one advantage, because it's a new team, he is at the very beginning of pit lane, so it's a nice, easy in, and with no one in front of him, a nice, easy out.
So the pit stop cycle is complete, and Will Power has opened up some ground on second place. A lot of action between the walls on the streets of St. Petersburg. We're back after this from your ABC station. Back live, the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg has just gone under the yellow flag for the second time, and it's for the same reason as the first. Debris, contact between cars, scattering bits and pieces of wing and bodywork at various points around the course.
Any of that will give you a puncture.
Right through the tires. Remember, these tires are slick tires they use in the racing cars. There's another piece right there coming out of turns 14 going on the main stretch. The other stuff that we saw was from the collision between Carlos Munoz and his teammate Simona Di Silvestro, and I'm sure they'll have a conversation in the trailer a little bit later on because of that. Now, when you're out there racing and you come up to these pieces at speed, it's just a quick avoidance because you don't want to run over it, as you mentioned, Eddie, because you have the slick tires. It's not like our tires in our road car that have a little bit of groove and a little bit of depth there. If you run over something here, it'll puncture the tire very quickly.
What I don't understand is why do they wait so many laps to call the yellow?
You can see all the damage on the front wing of Carlos Munoz's car, and let's check in with Jan.
And I can answer Eddie's question, of course, speculating, and that is that if there are some pieces of debris on the racetrack and some people make it into pit road and they stop, the stewards will look very carefully about going full course yellow. It closes the pits and puts everybody else completely off of sequence. You could see through those replays, more and more pieces of cars were coming off. They waited as long as they could to give every person an opportunity to pit, then close the pit, because if it ever goes full course caution and you're closed and you haven't pit, you go straight to the back.
Thank you.
So yellow flag number 2 for debris on the race course. It's opening day for the Verizon IndyCar Series, and shortly it'll be opening day for Major League Baseball. And Sunday Night Baseball, presented by Scott's, has the defending National League Central champion Cardinals and their old rivals, the Cubs, from Wrigley. Major League Baseball, St. Louis, Chicago, next Sunday at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on ESPN2. Of course, the top of the screen, the place where the Tampa Bay Rays will play their home games starting in just a couple of weeks. And I have no doubt we'll have plenty of the Rays on our ESPN Major League Baseball coverage throughout the season. So Scott Dixon, we saw him having troubles on the pit stop. He came back out on the racetrack in 22nd place out of 24 cars, 52 seconds behind the leaders. And then the yellow came.
Do we want to try and fix something or whatever's wrong with the car? We're talking about it now, Scott. Pits will be closed. We'll get a plan here. Yeah, but the only penalty is to go to the back, which we're already at. Copy that. We're working on a plan here.
Scott wants some work done on the car to improve the handling of the car, to get some more speed out of it. And his point was, we can come in there and do this because we're at the back already.
And more on the Dixon situation from Doc.
Well, the problem originally, Alan, was an air jack failure in the back of the car. That's what left them on pit road all this long. They had to actually get a manual jack and manually jack up the car to get the left and right rear tires off. And of course, right now, there's no way. They don't think they can fix the air jack. They may have to manually jack the car the rest of the race for the next 2 stops. That's one of the problems. Scott's also saying that the brakes may be going away. And the car has had a significant oversteer. He's been saving fuel, and the car would not be able to get the power down because it was spinning up off the corner. So a multitude of problems here early on for Scott Dixon. The only good news, the yellow now will give them a chance to come down pit road and take a look at it.
You won't have that much time, Scott, will you? You can't fix all of that in the race.
Well, you know, and I get to think about conversations with Scott before. He said, you know, this is just not a track that's ever been very kind to me, and he's never won here. Finished second, I think 3 times, if I can recall. But yeah, not one of your favorite tracks when you have difficulties coming to a facility like this all the time.
One of the things that Dixon told us when we sat down with him here on the other day was that he felt like they needed to get off to a fast start. That's been one of the weaknesses in their championship bids recently, was a slow start to the season. And so far today, this is not the way that they had hoped for this first race of the year to go.
He's in the pits, and they've shuffled a lot of their engineering around inside of the team too, so he's off to a fresh start.
Pit down here. We'll stop right down there on the board. Flares out. Guys are ready. Okay, right on the board for us.
Jack is still not working.
So you see they're going to take out the manual jacks for both the back and front of the car.
If we fast forward now, Alan, the first time they have a green stop there, you will lose 10 seconds doing it this way.
To see what they can see to try and free up maybe a piece of debris. Clobbered that the built-in jack at the back of the car. They'll certainly try and diagnose it.
Hold on.
So there's not as much urgency because we're under yellow right now, so they get a chance to take their time, maybe see if there's something that they can repair there for the next time, as you mentioned.
So Scott Dixon, former series champion, in trouble in the season opener for 2015. Caution out in the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Still working to clean up a lot of the bits and pieces that were dropped on the course in the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg after contact between cars. Second full course yellow of the race, the other also for debris that happened after some contact between cars on lap 1. Reminder, the SummitRacing.com NHRA Nationals from Las Vegas can be seen on ESPN2 in a couple of weeks. April 11th, we'll have qualifying runs for you at 6 Eastern time. And then the final eliminations on April 12th at 8 Eastern, also on ESPN2. And for the Verizon IndyCar Series, next race is at NOLA Motorsports Park, the first Indy Grand Prix of Louisiana, April 12th, 3 Eastern on NBC-SN from the Big Easy. As you saw in our side-by-side coverage, they were pushing Carlos Huertas' car back toward the garage area. Rick?
Yeah, Carlos Huertas, one of the winners from last year in Houston. This year already out of the race. We'll put the car out.
I think something on the steering column, because I couldn't turn properly to the right, so it was getting really difficult to turn to the right. I put a lot of lock on in the car, and it would turn like half of what I wanted, so yeah, that was it.
What was it like out there for those opening laps? I mean, a new season, were people respecting body work, or was it just like a regular start and no one cared?
Well, like normal. I don't think there's big difference. Obviously, if you touch a little bit, big pieces come out, but very similar.
All right, once again, Carlos Huerta's unfortunately out of the race today. Alan?
All right, Rick, thanks. So the 1-to-go signal being shown to the field here. Scott Dixon pitted a second time, and he will be at the tail of the field. And you look at the front of the grid, and Will Power has led every lap, picking up right where he left off when he claimed that #1 by winning the series championship at the end of last August.
Not only has he led every lap, but he's always managed to put a gap between himself and his teammate Castroneves. So he has been on a roll ever since he's been here.
6th straight season, Powers led laps in the opening race. Of course, Simon Pagenaud did lead a couple on an exchange of pit stop, but other than that, it's been all Will Power. There is Helio Castroneves running second in the 3. Getting a little warm up on the tires for this restart.
And Foyt's car is running third with Hawksworth.
Now, Jack Hawksworth did not pit under this yellow flag when everyone else did. Remember, Hawksworth had the damage to the front wing earlier on the 41 and made a pit stop now 27 laps ago. He'll be in soon. Rick?
Interesting, they were good. They had tires out there. They were ready and set up, but they decided they wanted to leave them out a little bit longer. The one interesting thing that Hawksworth has been saying on the radio is he doesn't think the red tires do as well as the black tires. He's saying he thinks he's giving away with the red tires. He wants to get back to the blacks as soon as possible.
So Hawksworth running third. Pagenaud is fourth. Montoya fifth. Then Bourdais, Sato, Kanaan, Newgarden, and Kimball the top 10. And here they come toward the final corner and the restart. Let's watch.
Green.
Whoa! Montoya passes 2 cars and holds on to it. One of them was his teammate.
I think that was definitely use of the push to pass, the button on the steering wheel to give you a little bit of extra horsepower. He took advantage of it because everybody's all clustered together. Here comes Tony Kanaan rifling up the inside, doing a very nice job, as you would expect him to do, because he's the master of that on restarts.
He is definitely the first lap king.
Boys, this track is not wide enough to go around 2 abreast in some of these turns.
And they're still doing it.
Josef Newgarden in the 67 car. Graham Rahal still pushing hard. Right behind the 11, Sebastian Bourdais. And see the back end kick out there?
Oh, contact back there. More bits and pieces flying.
These are bigger pieces than before.
Yellow flag for debris. That's Marco Andretti's car, I believe, that those pieces came from.
That looks like it's from the back.
Backed off in front of me.
No, that's the front wing.
Yep.
He's wagging the tail. His foot was on the gas. And he was trying to get around.
No, he hasn't done it yet.
Like he was trying to get around Chavez, and he just maybe misjudged the space, or Chavez lifted off and he clipped him. Watch the car on his left here. That's Andretti just in front.
Yeah, he clipped him on the way past.
Mistiming on Marco Andretti's part.
So third yellow flag of the race, and that are some of those 200 parts and pieces in the Honda Aero kit scattered in a way that they're not intended to be.
They seem to be more delicate than last year's, but boy.
That is a Honda-powered car, and they have talked about that. There's so many winglets on these Honda cars that putting a lot of pressure on the main plane of the wing, the big, large piece that goes from one side of the car to the other. So I'm just wondering if those pieces themselves are just flexing a fair amount and being a little bit more brittle.
It's not a NASCAR. You're not supposed to hit people with it. So you cannot build a wing that allows you to run into the back of somebody.
Let's check with Jan.
They're preparing a front wing for Marco Andretti if the pit's open, if in fact he needs that. I can tell you, when you say about they don't seem as strong as in the past, and yes, when you see that damage, when the pits do open, he will definitely need a front wing. Remember, when you make all these new pieces and these new flaps, they need to add up to be the same weight as the original Dallara piece. So more flaps, but same weight means they have to be lighter. So they do use very high-tech materials to build all these pieces, but by design, because you don't want to add weight to the car, they probably will not be as strong.
Good to have Jan, former driver and veteran broadcaster, with us on our ABC IndyCar telecasts for this season. So Marco Andretti having a decent run despite struggling throughout the weekend. Now running back in 13th and probably going to give up some spots, and it's been an expensive day for some of the Honda teams.
There's a new chart for us.
Yeah.
The wing destruction. Honda 3, Chevy 0.
Well, every now and then we keep track of different things that are unexpected.
As we mentioned, the wings are $18,000 to $20,000 for the complete wing up front, so obviously costing a little bit of money to these teams here today.
So third full course yellow of the race here at St. Petersburg. And again, most of the leaders were just on pit road, not all that many green flag laps to go. So the real question becomes, when do we see Jack Hawksworth give up fifth spot to pit, and Marco Andretti and any of the others that took some damage in that last contact, do we see them give up some track position and come in for repairs? Andretti's team is out in the pit lane, so expect to see him in just a moment. Look at the crowd here.
Full house.
Great event, beautiful day. Community really out in support of this event. Big effort by local businesses to be involved. Also, the checkered flag pennants and banners hanging everywhere in the shops and restaurants. And of course, with all respect to those of you, like some of my friends in New England, who reported to me by phone this morning that you got 2 inches of snow overnight. It's a beautiful 70 degrees here in St. Petersburg, Florida today.
And Eddie, you drove Formula One cars, ran at Monaco. You said the other day that this was a little bit like the Monaco setting. So
this is Florida's version of Monte Carlo.
Rick?
Jack Hawksworth brings the car in. They're going to do a half turn of front wing. Important to point out, they change it differently. See how he reaches up? They change it slightly differently. It's a smaller little setup than they used to have. They make the change, and he's gone. Jan?
Marco Andretti is now going to get his opportunity to get the front nose changed. Under caution, as we've talked about before, you don't have to be frantic. You just need to work your way through, not make any mistakes. He knows he's going to drop to the back of the order. Be sure that it's all seated properly. Now remember, his teammates, Carlos Munoz as an example, has also lost a nose front wing assembly. This team, if they have any more contact, will be running out of spares.
Definitely something to be watching as we run through what is still the majority of the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. 35 complete, 75 to go. So ready for the restart here at St. Pete. You saw during our side-by-side coverage, Takuma Sato had to come in and give up 5th place to get a wing change. Damage to the front of that 14 car. He's back in 20th place as we come around to get the green flag again. Will Power, the race leader. Castroneves second. Montoya really brave on that last restart. The red and white car in third, with Pagenaud fourth, and now Tony Kanaan in fifth. We'll see who makes the moves into turn one here.
Green.
Penske, 1, 2, 3, 4. Montoya's looking very strong. If he gets his confidence up, he's a car to watch. A car not the one that you do not want having behind you.
Remember a year ago, Juan Pablo Montoya, in the words of his team owner Roger Penske, was a frustrated duck. trying to figure out the cars and the way that they've changed since he last drove open-wheel cars. But after finishing last season with 3 straight top 5 finishes, Roger says Juan Pablo has entered this season full of confidence, and he's going to be hard to handle.
This is not the same Montoya we saw last year. He has every intention of getting past Helio Castroneves.
More on Montoya from Doc.
Before climbing in the car, Juan told me, I remember this race a year ago. I was the new kid on the block, the new driver for Penske. I played it conservative. The learning curve was steep. I'm not being conservative today. I'm here to win this race. He said the streets of Monaco were tight. This is an airport compared to that. I wanted Monaco, and I can win here today. A moment ago on the radio, he said, I'm good, the car's good, and I'm headed that way.
All right, Doc, thanks. James Hinchcliffe in the 5 has some troubles. And there are more bits and pieces on the racetrack.
Spoke with James this morning, and he's got a right rear flat, as you can see right there. Wondering if he actually ran over something, or maybe gave him the flat, or maybe touched the wall. Let's see.
Chavez.
There we go. Just enough to get to the sidewall of that right rear tire and deflate it. Looking on board now from Ryan Hunter Ray's car. You can see everything happening up in front.
All those little pieces flying around, it just takes one little needle of that to puncture a tire.
And for Hinch, you got to feel bad because that contact happened in the last corner, and then he's just past the pit lane entry, and he's got to limp all the way around the racetrack after the tire goes down.
And I talked to him this morning, and he said, you know something, we're off just a little bit. We're going to make some big changes for a warm-up. Hopefully get a race car that works better. And maybe didn't improve the car all that much, but unfortunately,
no balance adjustment.
Also, obviously, has a flat tire and losing a lot of time on the track.
And there's still a lot of debris on the track, and there's no yellow.
See the wing damage on Gabby Chavez in that 98 car.
Now, he's not getting through the turns as quick as he can. I'm sure that Scott Dixon has been alerted that his car is wounded, because when the front wing, and you can see debris coming off now that they're running over, when the front wing is broken like that, on Gabby's car, what ends up happening is the car is not going to turn as well and not as much front grip, and smartly comes into pits to change the front wing.
And Andretti tries to pass Dixon on the outside.
Okay, let's hit your mark.
Which one to look at? A couple of them side by side here into turn 1. That is Coletti 4 passing James Jakes in the 7. And then behind them, trying to fight his way back up through some of the traffic, Jack Hawksworth, Marco Andretti, and Scott Dixon. Remember, all 3 have had their troubles at various points in this race that sent them to the back of the field.
I would keep my eye on Marco Andretti because he was running well before he had that problem, and he is really good at traffic.
And he's probably really mad right now, too.
Yeah, that extra bonus for us is that he's probably very angry right now.
Simona Di Silvestro passing Sage Karam. So Di Silvestro back in 18th place, Karam in 19th. And Carlos Munoz with a look inside, but not able to stay inside of James Jakes. Jakes in the 7. And Munoz in the green and white car, and Scott Dixon right behind them in his familiar red colors.
Now, as you're diving down to the turns right now, you know, last year you might have been a little bit more aggressive to try to get the car in beside the competitor that's in front of you. But now everybody knows that the front nose is really so crucial. You can't knock the wings off. We've seen that happening here so much today. You can't go in there and maybe do little bumper cars like you did last year, Eddie. So,
and then if you add the fact that you have so much more downforce and you can brake later, there's less braking distance. So there's not that much time for both drivers to adjust their positions as they go in. That's why you see a lot of these noses flying off.
Yeah, and I want to play devil's advocate with you here for a second, my friend, Mr. Goodyear. Respectfully, because you've driven these race cars, but I haven't. But come on, you're not going to tell me a race driver is going to be patient he sees the possible opportunity to stick the nose in there on someone, he's going for it, right? That's his nature.
Absolutely going to do it, but maybe going around the outside as we're watching here right now might be more the answer instead of risking your front wing. But, you know, I think at this point in the race, you're going to go, okay, maybe I'll try next lap when I have an opportunity to be up beside the car just a little bit more. I agree with you, Alan. In the last 5 laps, that's what it's going to be all about.
We've seen some pretty interesting moves and some pretty interesting contact in this one for sure.
Out of this group of 4 cars, I would say Marco Andretti's the quickest.
Love this look.
You can see how narrow it is here between the walls. And Eddie, you and I have driven on these courses before. Remember, this is not a
There
race
goes
track.
Dixon. Sorry. There goes Dixon in a really difficult spot.
Yeah, very difficult.
Sorry, Scott.
But just to add to this, this is city street, so there's a crown in the road to allow the water to drain off on both sides. So every time you go through that back section, turns 8 and 9, you're going up the crown, down the other side of the crown. You got to catch the car before it hits the wall. All that has to happen with you making sure you don't touch the wall.
I think Andretti might tuck in behind. There we go. Boy, that is tight through turn 1. What a great camera angle.
The streets of St. Petersburg. Pretty good racing. A little bit back in the pack while Will Power is doing a lot of leading up front. We're back after this from your ABC station.
The Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Brought to you by Honda, an official vehicle of the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Beautiful day for a sail on Tampa Bay and right adjacent to the waters where that beautiful boat's having a cruise. The Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg through the streets of downtown being led by Will Power. Power's led all but 2 laps of the 46 we've completed in the race. It's a Penske 1, 2, 3, 4 and a car off. Is that James Jakes in the 7?
It is.
Who has been struggling. And people have been working to get around him. And now it looks like there's been some contact between Simona Di Silvestro and James Jakes that has caused damage to Di Silvestro's car and left Jakes by the side of the road.
Here we are right through and going into turns 13 and 14. Looks like Simona just miscalculated her braking zone. Let's look backwards now from James Jakes.
That wasn't even close.
Well, I'm going to say this. James has been sliding back through the pack. Remember, he was the guy that Marco Andretti and Scott Dixon and so on were passing or bottled up behind when we went to the commercial break, the local ABC station break. And so he's obviously having difficulty with his car. And I'll give Simona the benefit of the doubt, and James having difficulty with his car, and Simona that he just got off the gas and on the brakes for that slow corner a lot sooner than she was expecting.
Sounded like that, yeah, because he rolled off of it very quickly and seemed to just coast there for a second. So,
but the speed differential was enormous.
Well, to Alan's point, I think he was really coasting in there. So sad for Simona because this is one race that she has right now on her docket. She's trying to get another event with Andretti Autosport. Michael is very pleased, very satisfied when she tested with the team earlier this year. Remember, she was doing a great battle here a few years ago.
Here with Kanaan.
With Kanaan, where she finished 4th. Now listen. Yeah, he's still pretty deep in the turn, though, isn't he? Yeah, I think she's. That's going to be a racing incident, I'm sure, but I think she could have avoided that.
But you're not willing to give as much of the benefit of the doubt as I am.
Well, I think not. Yeah.
No, there was just too big of a difference in speed.
Okay. Well, full course yellow number 4 is out in this race, and the Andretti Autosport team has had a few front wings that they've had to repair today, and that's another one if Di Silvestro is going to be able to keep going on that 25 car. So going to be a difficult one on Michael Andretti's group here in the season opener where the parts tally is concerned.
From the last restart, Alan, Power has not managed to distance himself from Castroneves and Montoya.
Pit stops here for the race leaders, Rick.
Simon Pagenaud brings the car in, the first of them because he's so far down. They decide to go with red tires specifically because they think it's going to help him on the restarts. He hasn't had great restarts yet. Hopefully this will do the trick.
Montoya will come in. He's on the black tires. He will stay on the black tires. Felt the car that was the best there. In front of him, his teammates, Helio Castroneves putting red tires on. No adjustment. Will Power, red tires. Castroneves past Power on pit road and will take the lead as they exit pit road. Castroneves in front of Will Power for the first time today.
Now, back to what you were saying. I was kind of thinking that they were both kind of playing cat and mouse, Power and Castroneves, with each other where fuel was concerned. How much do I need to use and how much do I need to spend just to keep the guy behind me?
That's a good point, and I don't think we can figure that out in the booth, but he definitely was keeping him in hunting distance.
And Pagenaud got bottled up leaving that first pit stall at the entrance to pit road and cost him a little ground on his stop. Still under caution here in St. Petersburg at the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, season opener for the Verizon IndyCar Series, and Jack Hawksworth is now the leader by not pitting under this yellow flag. Look at our Mother's Race rundown, some of the topics of interest through the first portion of this race. Ryan Hunter-Reay not having the kind of day we might have expected from the Indy 500 winner.
You're just in the wrong place there.
Hunter-Reay running back in 12th place and has not really been a challenger for a top 5 spot at all throughout the course of this event. In fact, he's been back in the middle of the soup much of the day, where there have been a lot of body parts shed on race cars. That would be the second topic of interest in this race rundown. Wings, winglets, wing bits, flickers and flaps and all the other nicknames they have for them. Scattered, smothered, and covered.
You got it.
To take your favorite Waffle House term.
Sounds like a hamburger.
We've seen a lot of the bits and pieces of the new aero kits, Chevrolet and Honda, on these racetracks, and now James Jake's car being brought back to the pit area on the hook after the crash that caused this 4th yellow flag.
That's such a bad way to start off the season.
Now, there were a lot of close calls on pit road under this last set of stops. I mentioned Simon Pagenaud. They held him to get his car full of fuel, and by the time he left, he got caught up in some traffic. And Graham Rahal also in the middle of that same jam up in traffic on the pit lane.
Whoa. So close, and as a driver for Graham Rahal, you're coming out, you're trying to avoid the car that's in front, and also the crew member. You do not want to hit the crew member, but then you get in the pit lane itself and there's traffic.
That was brilliant reflexes from everybody involved in that, not to crash.
Nice job, guys. I'm gonna have to go clean my shorts out, okay?
Yeah, I think he does.
Well, while he's cleaning his shorts, they're still cleaning up the racetrack, and we'll clean up some business. Yellow flag in St. Pete. And the Verizon IndyCar Series kicking off its season. Our ABC coverage beginning the build-up to the 500 with the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg today from here in sunny Florida. Wrapping up the 4th caution of the race. Shuffle in the running order. Jack Hawksworth and Sage Karam didn't pit. They're 1st and 2nd in the 41 and 8. Then Helio Castroneves getting off pit road ahead of Will Power, who's dominated the race. Castroneves 3rd, Power 4th, Montoya 5th. And here comes the green flag.
Green, green.
Castroneves shuffle.
That's a bad traffic jam.
And Will Power right back to the lead. I saw another bit of a front wing flying on the front stretch too.
Sage Karam did a nice move getting a draft and making it to lead, but already some more contact right there. You can see the back of Charlie Kimball's car has been contacted. So the rear bumper valve looks like it's now pushed up from Graham Rahal.
Now that's a big piece.
See, but not near as delicate as the front wing, so he'll just be smoking.
My point of it being a big piece, that could hurt somebody if it flies off.
He's being told to pit this lap. Here's Rahal looking inside. Turn 10, contact, and Kimball's around.
Now,
Okay, we see you there. It's a full punch, yellow.
you know, for Graham, you got to know that he's coming in the pit lane. And you have the opportunity to make an easy pass here instead of sticking your nose in there. I know he thinks that maybe Charlie's not going to be able to go underneath the brakes as well because his car is damaged, but sometimes patience with the race maybe not even being halfway through here, or just about halfway, doesn't need to be done like that.
So that was an eventful lap. Started with two drivers who didn't pit being swarmed on the front stretch into turn one. Will Power cycles back to the lead. Castroneves is shuffled back to 6th. Then this on the run down to turn 4.
Well, the contact comes from the 22.
Simon Pagenaud.
Hit my front wing. Hit my front wing.
I was expecting to see Simon Pagenaud farther up on this race. Scott, how about you?
Well, he's so far down pit lane. It's the first pit box coming in, but let's look at this here right now. So Graham was trying to take advantage of it, but you know, you got 2 more turns until that the pit entrance would be where Charlie Kimball's going to go in. You can see his team owner, Charlie Kimball's team owner, Chip Ganassi, going, Didn't say that race drivers always had patience, did we?
No. The point I was trying to make, Alan, is that when you get in the back like that, things like that happen. Or if you're at the front end, it's less probable.
Well, I don't know. The front end was a pretty good mess there on that restart too. It's less probable, yes, but it sure happened on that one, and got a lot of cars now that are messed up, including Simon Pagenaud's.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's slow as hell, and then he decides to dive deep into the brake zone. I just touched him. Hopefully we can get away with the front wing here, because it looks like it's flopping around a little. I didn't know what he was doing. He was like going so slow that he was going to let me by, and then all of a sudden he sped up.
So Graham says that the wing is flapping around a little bit. If we can see the front of the car to see if there's any damage there. If he's lucky and he has no damage and the wing will remain intact, then he is no worse for wear.
But Pagenaud's got a serious issue with his. He's missing that telescope, and it looks like another chunk is off also. The problem is, what we've seen, Alan, is that you lose a piece, and then the whole rest of the wing starts to disintegrate as you go around.
Yeah.
So obviously they're engineered to all be tightened together.
Well, Simon Pagenaud running in the front group for much of the day, but again, he has that first pit stall by his team being a new one and not having any entrant points from last season. They basically had the last pit stall from turn 1 forward, so he's at the first pit at pit entry. We saw him get jammed up there when his team had to wait on fuel, and he got out, got caught up with Graham Rahal and Charlie Kimball and all the others, and then on the big restart jam down to turn 4, had the contact with Kimball, and the whole chain of events that led to Kimball winding up in the tires. Through all of that, you asked me during the commercial break how long I thought it would take for Will Power to get back to the lead. I told you 1 straightaway.
You were right.
Here it is.
Perfect pass. And I think I'll pass those two too while I'm at it. So far, looking at how this race has progressed, Will Power has continued where he left the championship last year as the undisputed leader of the Penske group.
Now we play the game, guess the number. What do you think the number of most cautions in a race here at St. Petersburg is?
Oh, 5?
Too low. It's 7. We're at 5 now in this race, and we're just at halfway. Back after this from your ABC station. Coming to the green flag, Will Power the race leader. Juan Pablo Montoya now 2nd. Sage Karam 3rd, Jack Hawksworth 4th, Tony Kanaan 5th, Helio Castroneves all the way back to 6th place.
I'd watch Montoya right here.
That's low gain. Another wing.
Hawksworth going around number 8 of Sage Karam.
Right when he was pulling out, he clipped the back of the car and lost a piece of the wing.
Well, I think also Sage also moved over a second time to try to stop the progress.
Keep going.
And I'm sure that's the message to the 41 of Jack Hawksworth. Keep going.
He didn't add, we don't have any more wings, just keep going.
Yeah. I'm running down to the auto parts store to get some more parts.
Just joining us, it has been a street slugfest here in St. Pete today. Lots of contact between cars. Not a lot of big crashes, but a lot of those wings, the new aero kits being scattered across the pavement as the give and take ratio between drivers here in this race has been tilted a lot more toward take and a lot less toward give.
Absolutely, and I think the man or the company that's going to make the most money this weekend is the one repairing all the bodywork on Monday.
Here's the 3 of Castronevo, so you saw I got shuffled back. And let's look at the broken wings right now. Honda up to 7, Chevy just 1 so far. 3 of those Honda have been for Andretti Autosport.
I love those. Oh, that's a great chart.
Marco Andretti, one of those who's had the broken wing earlier today, trying to take a spot away from Luca Filippi.
I think he's driving one of the best races I have seen him drive in a long time.
Marco? Yep.
Yes. He's right on it. He never gives up, and he keeps attacking anything that's in front of him. He's like a rabid dog.
You know, and he said the other day when they took it off the trailer, it just wasn't compliant to the road. He just didn't have any grip. So, you know, you can get very frustrated as a driver, especially when you want to do well, especially at the very first race of the season, as we see another part on track right now. But give it to Marco. He's been very smart and keeps working with the team and getting a car underneath him that's just a little bit better than what it was when it rolled off the trailer.
See the stripe flag from the starter stand showing that the oil or debris on the track, that's that end plate off the 41 of Hawksworth that came out in the contact with Sage Karam.
That is a big piece of bodywork on the track. Let's see how Marco handles this bit of traffic.
You know, the one thing, guys, with all the yellows that we've had here, we probably have a lot of relieved drivers actually in the cockpit, because a lot of them were worried, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, about how tough these cars were to drive around this course because of the added downforce with these new aero kits. No power steering in the cars, very forceful on the drivers. A lot of sore wrists, sore arms. They thought they would be really just tired at the end of the day, but with this many yellows here, probably not going to have much fading of drivers in the last quarter of this race.
Now, as you see the field come down this main straightaway, you'll notice that piece of debris gone. IndyCar has technology that tracks all the cars around the racetrack, and they had a big enough gap between the last car in the field and the first car in the field that a safety team official was able to step out onto the racetrack and pick up that piece of wing and clear it off the racetrack without putting the race under a full course yellow. And without putting the official in danger in any way.
More importantly.
Yes. Day 11, Hunter Ray, the yellow 28. This is for 9th and 10th, right behind Simon Pagenaud. And there is Graham Rahal up in 7th at the head end of this group. Jan?
Graham Rahal, with that incident that we saw with Charlie Kimball, there was a call across race control that incident is being reviewed. We have still not heard as to whether there'll be a penalty for Graham Rahal, but I can tell you for Simona Di Silvestro, with her contact a couple of corners later, she just had to do a drive-through just now, so they may be working their way up to Rahal. He's not clean yet as he goes for a move.
Trying to get around Sage Karam in the 8th.
And may I add, his front wing is flopping all over the place, so it's not handling right as it should be.
I'll give it to
Look
Graham.
at that, on the right-hand side.
Great move, great determination, great timing to come out of 13 and 14 and make the pass perfectly. But I will also say I've seen a few times here with Sage Karam, he continues to move across the road, and I'm sure officials are going to start looking at his way of driving here.
Officials have looked at the Graham Rahal incident. He will get a pass-through penalty for avoidable contact. So despite the move to get around Karam there, you should see the 15 coming through the pit lane shortly, which is going to take Graham from 6th place back into the field.
Good call, I think.
Well, I understand it is a good call because we talked about it before. Should have waited until Charlie Kimball was coming in the pit
Graham, they're
lane.
telling you for avoidable contact and drive-through penalty. We're arguing with them right now. We clearly don't think that was your issue.
Well, he's been advised. We'll see what happens. Pagenaud working on Karam. And again, Pagenaud missing that upright on the right front wing of his Chevy.
And let's remember that Karam had an accident in testing before this race and hurt his wrist, so he's not 100% today.
That's a great point, Eddie, especially at a course like here where it's so punishing on your body anyways, coming up through the steering wheel and then into your wrist, because when you're going over this bumpy circuit, and he does have a brace on his hand that he is wearing, and I asked him the other day about it. He says, you know, when I'm in the car, I don't feel the pain, but when I get out of the car, it's really, really bad.
Those sort of things happen as a whisper of pain in the beginning, and by the end of the race, they're screaming at you.
Watch Pagenaud at work here. It was Karam that ducked into the pit lane in the 8 car.
I think Pagenaud's going to have a problem with Mordosu.
I'm not so sure that he might be able to start moving forward now, because I've talked to a few of the drivers and they say with this new aero kit, as we're starting to watch the leaders here again with Will Power and Juan Pablo Montoya first and second, just a very slim margin between the two. A lot of drivers are saying that with this new bodywork, you can actually feel the turbulence from the car in front of you a little bit earlier. So I'm just wondering, for a guy like Simon Pagenaud, who is running up front right now with the cars in front of him, he was not able to get past them as easily as he had hoped.
Power came out of that last corner. You could see him tilt his head to a side and check and see where Montoya was in the mirrors.
Watch the miles per hour gain here. Up towards turn 4.
Graham Rahal serving the drive-through penalty for the avoidable contact on the left.
Shame, one of his best races here he's had in a long, long time, having to serve the penalty. Watch the steering in your left-hand side of the screen for Will Power. Down to the gears. Second gear coming out of turn 10. Using the paddle shifters on the front of the steering wheel.
A look from Will Power's Verizon-sponsored car, and a reminder to download the IndyCar 15 mobile app to get live streams from in-car cameras and more from Verizon. One and two. Cars 1 and 2, positions 1 and 2. Will Power won Pablo Montoya. Still 44 laps to go in the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. 42 laps to go, 68 complete in the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, as the Verizon IndyCar Series opens its 2015 campaign here in sunny 72-degree Florida. So, the opener of the season gets a lot of attention always. Some interested people watching and commenting online on the Twitter. Townsend Bell.
I think he might be right. Bill, it would have been a lot stronger than what they had, and there would have been a lot less souvenirs for the public had it been machined out of solid.
And Catherine Legg.
Scott?
How about that? Hold the debris, Batman. I think that's the case for today, isn't it? Lots of debris.
Well, I think it's one of the conversation points before the start. Of course, today the debut of the new aero kits designed by Chevrolet and Honda to put their own stamp and style on the look and performance of the race cars. It was one of the conversation points that with all the winglets and so on and the flicks and flaps that the cars have now, that the potential was there for there to be a lot more if there was a lot of contact between cars. We all wondered if it would be the case. Agree or disagree, but what we've seen today has been perhaps more than we might have expected.
I think, and by the fact that they haven't done enough testing with it.
Jack Hawksworth in.
Piece missing out there. We're going to leave the wing alone. Go.
You can see when the car leaves the pit lane there, the front wing is vibrating. That's one thing they've been talking about on some of the Honda cars, that because they have so many pieces out on the outer edge of the wing compared to the Chevy, that more pressure on the wing, and they're finding that does vibrate just a little bit more.
An important part that we haven't discussed at this battle between Power and Montoya is that Power is on reds and Montoya is on blacks. And Power is having a very hard time shaking Montoya.
Power on the softer red alternate tire. And an update on the top two in the race from Dr. Jerry Punch.
Yeah, both those cars guys are being told by their respective pits, fuel conservation. Both are being told they need 2.8 to be able to make it about 8 or 9 more laps to get their fuel window to open on lap 79 or 80. Now, they're also warning Montoya to take care of his tires. He had been very, very aggressive, and they're concerned about the tires on the 2 car going away before they can make that final stop in about 8 laps. Jan.
And Doc, that's very interesting about the tires, and this may be surprising, but the more downforce you have on a car, you actually get better tire wear, because what causes tire wear is when the car slides across the racetrack. With more downforce, they become hotter, and when you have the red sidewall tires, you build more heat. So it's very interesting with these new aero kits. It's changed not only fuel strategy, but also tire strategy.
And this is all new, so they're learning at Scott for the first time.
Been a lot of conversation about the Penske teammates with the addition of Simon Pagenaud to the team, and talking with all of the drivers there. Each one of them discussed how their driving styles compare and contrast, and the addition of another data point and so on. But every one of them said, without being prompted, how differently Juan Pablo Montoya's driving style is from most everybody else on the team. You watch Will Power here from behind the wheel.
Smooth and calculated, I guess we will call that, and all the drivers drive the cars very differently and hard into the turn, but they all said, as you're mentioning, Alan, that Juan Pablo seems to drive the car in deeper than some of the other guys, gets back on the gas maybe a little quicker, could be a little bit rougher, and sometimes is not as consistent as some of the other drivers, but they all say, but he goes fast.
And that's the word that everyone mentioned, is he's a very seat-of-the-pants driver, and he adjusts in the car every lap and tries something different almost every lap, whereas some of the other guys are much more, this is my break point. One is, I'm going to try this and I'm going to try that, and much more by the feel per lap.
And they want the car tuned to their style, and as you're saying, Juan doesn't mind adapting to what the car needs. So you mentioned, Eddie, that he is on the black primary tire right now, so maybe he's able to get more out of that tire than some of the other drivers were.
I'll try to put it in a simple. I couldn't understand what you guys were saying. I think he just throws it in a corner and works it out, regardless of what's going to happen. If the back slips out, he corrects. If it pushes, he corrects. It's just, he runs on pure talent and adrenaline. I think he's one of the funnest drivers I've ever seen drive in every category he's been in Formula One, in NASCAR, and here.
And the speed he had in Formula One was incredible.
It was astonishing.
Now Montoya trying to chase down and stay with his teammate Will Power up to, as you heard Doc report a minute ago, that last pit stop, which they would be about 3 to 6 laps away from. So a break here. Penske with the top 2 spots. Will Power, Juan Pablo Montoya. Tony Kanaan is third at St. Pete. Pretty good little fight for third here between 2 of this series' veteran drivers. Tony Kanaan in the 10, Helio Castroneves in the 3. Fighting for that final position on the podium here with 33 laps to go. Make it 34 laps to go, beg your pardon, in St. Pete.
And they are 12 seconds behind Power and Montoya, but they're doing exactly the same lap times.
And on driving for Ganassi Racing, we ride with him.
Both Tony Kanaan and the car that you see behind him, Helio Castroneves, grew up in Brazil racing go-karts against each other. Both wanted to get to the big-time motor racing. Didn't know if they'd be able to do it, but used to promise each other that if I get further than you, I'll try and help you get to the same level that I'm at. When Tony first moved over here, moved into Ohio to Steve Horn's shop for Tasman Racing, and used to sleep in the shop just so he could go off and drive an Indy Lights car.
If he wants to help me, he can move out of the way and let him go by, I guess, at this point.
Well,
we'll see how good this friendship really goes.
Downstairs to Jan.
And in Tony Kanaan's situation, he has to push really hard as you ride on board, but he also has to save fuel. He needs to do, by my estimation, a lap or 2 more, possibly 3, to be sure he gets it to the end. The Chevrolets can probably go 30, 31 laps. You can see there's 33 to go. So he's got to nurse this thing in case it's green all the way to the end, and he's got heat from behind. The team's saying, you got to save some fuel, we got to get in the window.
If he starts saving too much fuel, Castroneves will get by, and that might be necessary.
Rick?
Graham Rahal brings the car in. I can tell you that is one frustrated driver that I've been hearing on that car quite a bit this afternoon. Very unhappy with that penalty. He felt there was no way that he could avoid that contact. They've just been telling him, calm down, get ahead, pay attention to you can gain some spots, and we'll do what we can in this race.
Now, last year, the final pit stops in the race were made at lap 77, which is the lap we're on now. They were made under caution. There was another yellow after that helped everybody get there. We'll see if Graham Rahal is able to duck in first. Maybe there's a caution that brings everybody else to pit road, and he ends up being the track position winner on the gambit there.
And certainly, I'm sure that's what they're thinking, because there has been so many yellows here today. But as case usually happens in front of you, there won't be one.
Whenever your hope is not a very good strategy, whenever you count on a yellow, it never comes.
And still the race for the lead between Power and Montoya.
I think they've settled into what you said before, Alan, into a fuel-saving rhythm.
Race hard enough to keep the other guy either A, behind you, or B, in sight.
And their times have slowed down about 0.6 of a second.
While saving what you can to try and make some fuel. James Hinchcliffe on pit road for his stop. And again, a quick reminder to download the IndyCar 15 mobile app to get live streams from the in-car cameras and more from Verizon. These two have 13 seconds on Tony Kanaan and Helio Castroneves. Simon Pagenaud still running 5th despite the damage to the right front wing. Ryan Hunter-Reay worked his way back into the top 10 after falling to 17th on the first lap. Doc?
And they battled an amazing understeer for much of the weekend. Couldn't get the rear of the car stable on Friday. Got it fixed. Had a huge understeer yesterday and this morning. In spite of that, in trouble getting the car to turn in turn 1. They have been able to salvage possibly a top 5 finish. Final pit stop for Ryan Hunter-Reay. He's away.
After finishing second in this race to open last season, every position he's able to gain in this last run of the race is going to be bonus points for Ryan Hunter-Reay, again getting shuffled in the early part of this race.
He is a driver that never gives up.
5th place here, Pagenaud, the yellow and white 22, and Sebastian Bourdais, who of course originally from France but has lived in St. Petersburg, Florida for many years, has never had much luck in his hometown race. Speaking with Sebastian yesterday, he said that his team's story from last season was we had pace but no luck, no results. This year they hope to maintain the pace and get the results to go with it. He said our strength that we showed last year was when we're off, we seem to find the solution fairly quickly. Well, they went to Sebring Raceway earlier this week to do some testing before coming here. And everything they tried at Sebring that they thought would help them here at St. Pete didn't work a bit when practice opened here on Friday, and they had to completely start all over again.
Did they try the opposite?
Well, what they tried gained them some pace, and he had a solid starting spot in qualifying run, and he's been right around, I'll say 5th to 8th for most of this race in that 11 car.
I think he's had a great race today, and he's definitely trying to find a way to get around Pagenaud. Gaining a little bit under braking.
Here's Montoya, first of the front runners to make a pit stop. Doc?
Worried he may have used a little more fuel than his teammates, so he comes in a lap earlier. He will go to sticker red tires, a softer tire. He's been very fast on the primary compound, the black. Could he be even faster on the reds?
Simon Pagenaud brings the car in. Not the race he wanted. A few incidents that have brought him back, but a nice clean stop. He should be good to go without any fuel saving for the rest of this race.
Lots of others on the pit lane here. Luca Filippi, Marco Andretti. There's Andretti, Jan.
Yes, to Marco Andretti as well as some others. Luca Filippi also taking service. This is the part where you want to have enough fuel. That's why they waited. You heard some of the other reports. You want to take this stop with enough fuel that you can go for it, not have to save fuel. Doc?
Here's the 9 car in, the target car in, getting service. It'll be normal service. Remember the problem with the air jack and having to manually jack up the back of the car. The left rear jack delayed in getting up off the ground. And now, of course, the problem with getting the car down. Here is the leader, the pole sitter, Will Power, who has dominated today. It will be sticker red tires for Power. The last time they pitted, they had a problem with the right rear wheel nut. The nut would not go on. They had to hit it twice. He lost the lead to Castroneves. All 4 tires are on. The nuts are tight. Got it full of fuel, and he's away.
And he had to really work the fuel to make this window, but they're very happy. They decided to make no changes on the car, and he slots in right where he wants to be now, hopefully with some fuel to work with.
Helio Castroneves is now the race leader. It's Carlos Munoz down and away. He's had some difficulties today, had to replace a front wing. And we watch Castroneves make his way around toward the pit area straight away and see if he makes his final stop here. There's Castroneves into pit.
He was wasting no time getting in the pits.
By the way, behind them, Montoya got out ahead of Will Power. We'll see how Castroneves blends in here. They should go by him because he was almost 13 seconds behind Power and Montoya before the cycle started. Doc?
It is the captain himself, Roger Penske, who calls Castroneves on. He has basically held the reins back on Castroneves much of the day, opting to save fuel. That will not be the case now. Tires going on Castroneves. They will turn him loose here in this final stint. Helio says, I saved my best for last, and now it's last, and I got to go.
This outlap is so important on this last stint.
It's out just ahead of Bourdais and Pagenaud.
Still doesn't have his tires up to temperature. These next 2 or 3 corners are going to be very tricky.
Nice thing about this track, though, because it's so tight, Eddie, up in this section here, there's not really a place for somebody to get past you, so you get a few turns to get some tire temp into the tires.
Oh, Pagenaud on Bourdais.
On the outside.
Amazing.
There was no room.
That's just a place you don't pass at. Pagenaud knew that he had to get up behind Castroneves, couldn't stay behind Bourdais any longer.
So the lead has changed hands, and it's now on Pablo Montoya in the race lead. Remember, Montoya and Power pitted a lap apart. Watch as Will leaves the pits from the overhead shot, and you'll see Montoya just flash past him. Look left. There he goes.
But now they're both on reds. Montoya and Power have the same tires, whereas in the last stint, they didn't.
Juan has opened up a 3-second lead on Will Power after that round of pit stops. Power's dominated, led 75 of 84 laps. Montoya leads now, though. Back after this from your ABC station. Here at the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, Juan Pablo Montoya out in front. After an exchange on pit stops, Montoya stopping at lap 81, Power stopping at lap 82, and they exchange positions. Watch the pit stop here for Power. We call your attention to the back of the car after the work is done. Done with the service, but nobody pulled the jack.
Yeah, and if you add to that the fact that Montoya probably put everything he had into his outlap with cold tires, those two things put him behind.
So now Montoya with that 3-second lead. Jack Hawksworth, remember he's on an alternate pit stop schedule than everybody else. He's now in third, with Tony Kanaan fourth and Helio Castroneves fifth. Rest of the top 10 coming across the top of the screen. 21 of the 24 starters on the lead lap. Carlos Huertas is out of the race earlier. Talked about the steering problem. Francesco Draconi is also out of the race, the other Dale Coyne car. And those two will not be running at the finish. More on the race leader from Doc.
And remember, Montoya pitted 1 lap before Will Power, and last time by they told Montoya, you got to make 2.7. He came by this time and they said, hey, we're serious, you got to make 2.7. I think they're worried about the fuel mileage for Montoya. Hard to get him to back up, and they're also worried about him abusing these red tires. He basically used up the black tires, and these are much softer. So tire wear is an issue maybe for Montoya, but also more importantly now, fuel mileage. Got to slow down and save some fuel.
I am loving this version of Montoya. If he starts the season off this way, he's he's going to be tough to beat. And when we get to Indy, he'll really be tough to beat.
Well, I've been watching the times actually between both those drivers, and continuously Will Power is starting to gain 2 to 3 tenths, sometimes 4 tenths a lap. You can start to see that that distance is starting to shrink.
Well, if they're telling Montoya he's got to make a fuel number, then he does have to meter that speed a little bit, whether electronically through the fuel settings that they can change on the steering wheel with the engine mapping of the car, or through that right foot.
Catching Montoya is one thing. Getting around him is another. Especially when you're teammates, so it's going to have to be very clean.
Down into turn 10, back on the gas.
This is a game of discipline and patience right now. And as Alan said, fuel might end up being his biggest enemy on those last 2 or 3 corners.
And because of his driving style being what they almost call a little bit abrupt, driving in very hard, getting back on the gas pedal very quickly, you really use up fuel, that type of technique. They always talk about Scott Dixon with the Ganassi team, a guy that actually what they call makes fuel, because he can be very smooth with the pedals and carry the speed through mid-turn. So we'll continue to watch here as Will Power continues to knock off a couple of tenths each and every lap.
Yeah, Power's gained a full second on Montoya. He's gone from 3 seconds behind to 1.9 seconds behind. Now, if you're not a regular follower of IndyCar, these cars have very sophisticated onboard telemetry that transmits back to the pit area. So the people in Montoya's pit are watching his fuel usage and the miles per gallon usage on every minute of every lap of this race. They know exactly what he's burning and what he needs to get. They know what mapping selection he's put the car into on the steering wheel, and they can follow that and continue to assess where they stand in live real time.
And he doesn't have to think about that. They're giving him a number and he has it on the screen. All he has to think about is driving as efficiently as he can and keeping the lead. And we have 19 laps to go. A lot can happen in 19 laps.
Yeah, and Will Power just knocked off another half a second that last lap. So interesting to watch to see if he can sort of conserve fuel until Will maybe gets to within a half a second of him. Maybe he's conserved enough fuel at that point in time, and Juan Pablo can put his foot back in the gas.
And a big gap from these drivers, by the way, back to third place, 8.5 seconds back to Jack Hawksworth.
These last laps that we're going to watch are the ones where you could really tell the difference between the drivers that have trained and are fit and those that are not. Especially with these new cars that have all this extra downforce, and the steering is supposedly a lot heavier.
Power's there, down to 1 second. Now remember that they have the push to pass option, which gives them that 15-second burst of additional horsepower that they can use 10 of during the race. You see they each have 4 left. They'll be trying to save some in case there's a late restart.
And drivers can push it when they want to try and get past the person that's in front, and the person in front can push it in retaliation to try to stay in front.
Yeah, but when you're being passed, and if you haven't pushed it yet, you're a little bit behind the curve. It takes a while for it to happen.
Down to 9/10 of a second.
One more lap at this pace and Power's in striking distance.
But again, what we don't know, and Juan does, how much has he been saving fuel, and has he built enough left that when it gets to a point, he can turn it loose and try and stay in front of Power at full bore. Very interesting. As we're inside the final 20 laps of the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, you won't miss a second of the action side by side here on ABC. Look at our Honda telemetry with Ryan Hunter-Reay, who's worked his way back up to 7th place. Remember, Hunter-Reay got shuffled as far back as 17th after getting shoved wide in turn 1 of lap 1. It's been a steady dig back out for last year's Indianapolis 500 winner. Up front, from 3 seconds behind, Will Power now a half a second behind. How much fuel was Montoya saving to allow that to happen? Where do they stand with 14 laps to go? They've got a clear 11 seconds on 3rd place Tony Kanaan and 4th place Helio Castroneves, who'll probably have a good fight for themselves for the final spot on the podium, but Will Power tried to make himself seen in Montoya's mirrors there.
That's what you call knocking on the door. I'm here. Just in case you forgot, I'm right behind you. Now we'll see what sort of a different line he takes on most of the corners. The one advantage that Montoya has right now is that supposedly with this new downforce package that they have, the front car disturbs the air for the back car, Scott, especially in this fast section after turn 1.
Which is something that generally doesn't happen at a street circuit like this. It's more apt for countryside circuits that are out in the country, like Mid-Ohio or something like that we visit. But we've had that report from quite a few drivers, and they said they would learn more about it as they get a chance to race the cars here. So it might be a little difficult sometimes to actually get up as close to the car in front as you need to be able to take advantage of getting that slipstream down the straight.
Yeah, Kanaan was adamant about that.
Not pictured, Jack Hawksworth did give up position in the top 5 to make his final pit stop. So Hawksworth is all the way back in 12th place, 34 seconds from the race lead.
What a great race by Kanaan today. He's picking up under braking.
Yeah, but look at the line that Juan Pablo uses on the exit.
He gains coming out. They're so evenly balanced.
Still clear by 3.
13 laps to go. That's 12 laps to go. That's still a long way to stay ahead of a car that's that close to you.
So usually Juan Pablo's the guy that drives the thing in so deep into the turn. So I'm wondering right now if he's just sort of doing that little bit of coasting going into the turn, saving a little bit of fuel when you get off the gas pedal a little bit earlier. As we can see, Will gains under braking just a little bit.
Remember, just after that last pit stop, Doc reported from Montoya's pit, they were hollering at him that he needed to make a certain mileage number per lap. An update there, Doc?
Well, he seems to be okay on the mileage as far as the number he has to make, but here's the bad part about having a teammate that's chasing you. Will Power is well aware of the fact that Montoya began this race today on red tires and wore them out before the first stop. The tires were gone. And so now the warnings that have come over the radios here to Montoya have been about trying to save the tires. Apparently the fuel number may be closer, okay, but they're worried about the tires going away in the final 9 or 10 laps. And Will Power just trying to keep the pressure up.
11 to go. Montoya and Power, 1 and 2, well clear of third place. You'll see it side by side on ABC in the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. You saw it in our ABC side-by-side coverage. Will Power took a run at Juan Pablo Montoya in turn 10. As Montoya tried to hold the lead, the contact brushed that upper right winglet off the front side of the one car. Another look at it here.
Montoya got a slow drive off of turn 9, didn't get through the kink very well, but some NASCAR-style bumping going on, some great driving by Juan Pablo Montoya. Now on board here, watch Will Power take a chance, dive in. The door closes on him, he sees it.
Now the winglet off of Power's car slid off the course there in turn 10, but then that came out from underneath his car down this main straightaway.
He's thinking, ooh.
That's the most emotion I've seen from him in 20 years.
Well, Roger says, frequently and often, I expect my drivers to race each other hard and race for the win. I just don't want them to take each other out.
That was perfect. That was really good driving on both of those drivers, Scott. I mean, that was really tight. I can understand Power had an opportunity there, but it was the first one that he had.
It sort of tells me that he was giving it just about all that he had, and there was an opportunity and he was going to try and take it up, because I wondered if he was maybe sitting back for 5 to go.
Passing Montoya in a place like that, boy, you've really got to have more than just a quarter of your car in.
He did kick the push to pass button when he tried to make that run, and Montoya did not.
Well, there's the surge in power then, because I wondered if maybe Montoya didn't get off the corner well, so give it to Will. He was trying to do it on an act of surprise, passing somewhere where he maybe didn't expect it.
Now Montoya's coming up on traffic, so this could easily turn around.
And quite a group of traffic. There are about 8 cars ahead of the race leaders here that they'll have to navigate over these final just over 6 laps.
So it might not be over.
Normally the advantage is of the first car that hits traffic, but depends on where he catches them.
6 laps to go.
And Will Power just put in a very quick lap.
Now those cars that are in front of Juan Pablo Montoya, as they go around the circuit, there's corner marshals that will wave the blue flag to the cars directly in front, letting them know that faster cars are coming from behind. So be mindful of that, look in the mirror, and they'll know that they're leaders. So if he can move over and give them a place to pass, hopefully they can do that.
Will Power has figured out what the change of balances with the car, and he's closed the gap on Montoya. He gets by one and both cars.
That was an advantage definitely for Juan.
James Jakes, the first car to pull over. That's Sage Karam in the 8 as Power looks for a way around.
Get out of the way, get out of the way.
Yeah, he's not doing any favors right there.
After this lap, there's only going to be 5 laps to go.
Yeah, damage may be done right there. I'm sure Will Power will probably have a conversation with Sage Karam after this event here today. I know I would.
It wouldn't be, hey, you want to go have a coffee, would it?
Yeah, I wouldn't be buying him a coffee, you're right.
Will Power dominated this race. He led most of the event. Gave up the lead a couple of laps to Simon Pagenaud on the first cycle of pit stops. Gave up the lead to Jack Hawksworth on a cycle of pit stops. Lost a little ground to Helio Castroneves on pit road the first time, but they weren't leading. Some other people stayed out to have the lead, and Power was able to rocket right past all of them on that restart when things got bottled up behind cars that hadn't pitted. Then the key moment in this one on pit road at laps 81 and 82 when Montoya came in first. And when Power came in a lap later with the lead, it's a little slower getting away, and Montoya got out in front of him.
And you know what's interesting in this one? We talked about the Penske domination that we expected to see today. Obviously, the drivers are up front, but we expected to see Will Power and Simon Pagenaud battling for the lead. But right now, you've got a guy, Juan Pablo. Remember, he came back to Indy cars just last year, said I was driving behind the car for the first half of the season, then I finally got it going at the end of the season. He's the guy that may end up winning this event, and a bit of a surprise, probably for everybody on the team.
Except him.
So the Penske cars that started 1, 2, 3, 4 are running 1, 2, 4, 5. And the third place car is Tony Kanaan there in the Ganassi Racing number 10.
Ahead of Castroneves. He's had a great weekend. Probably one of the fittest drivers, if not the fittest driver in the field.
Tony talked to us about the difference between starting this season versus starting last being his first with the Chip Ganassi Racing team. And he said confidence and understanding. I know how they work, I know how my teammate work, I know how the system works, and now I feel more confident speaking up for what I want within the system and getting it.
Exactly, because remember he said it when I first arrived there, I was trying to drive cars that were perfect for guys like Scott Dixon. He said it took me a half a season before I got comfortable in saying, hey guys, it doesn't work for me. So he worked with the engineers, got more comfortable with the car, and he said, I'm so much further ahead this season than I was last, as you mentioned, Alan.
So Kanaan being the one to spoil the Penske party at the front of the pack. Juan Pablo Montoya coming to 2 laps to go.
And he's keeping the distance consistent.
Our Firestone durable driver of the race. Again, getting the lead on the exchange of pit stops and fending off the challenge of Will Power. Now, if there's any question about did he make enough fuel to make the finish, we'll hope they've figured that out by now and dialed it back a little bit.
There is a big gaggle of cars up ahead of him.
There we go.
Yeah, and when there's more than 1 or 2, it's usually difficult to get around. And that group will probably be racing each other for a position, so sometimes you're not mindful to look in the mirror.
I don't know if he'll catch them in 2 laps, but he might. This group that includes a number of drivers that have had some trouble today, including Scott Dixon way back there in 16th place.
Oh, he will catch him.
First one
there he is right there.
Is the 98, Gabby Chavez, last year's Indy Lights champion. Rookie this year in the Verizon IndyCar Series, driving the 98. Chavez has had his share of troubles today.
He has just 2 seconds overpowered, 1.7 seconds overpowered. And you can throw that amount of time away in 2 corners.
So here he comes to the white flag. And we enter the final lap of the season opening race for Montoya. Montoya, the 39-year-old, with 1 win last year. That came at Pocono. Finished 4th in the championship. And of course, the first part of the season, very much a struggle as he adapted to returning to open-wheel racing. But he finished the season with 3 straight top 5s after some mid-season adjustments to his team lineup last year, and has picked up this season right where he left off at the front of the field.
Boy, this is going to be tight right at the end.
Trouble in front of him.
Nope.
Kimball gets spun around, but he's well clear of Montoya. And here comes Juan Pablo to the final corner with the checkered flag ahead. His first win of the season and his 13th career in the Verizon IndyCar Series, Juan Pablo Montoya wins at St. Petersburg.
Good job, guys. Hell of a job. Hell of a job. Copy. Hell of a no season. Thank you.
For the captain, Roger Penske, a trip to victory lane, and 4 of the first 5 finishers to start off this year. How about that drive for Montoya?
He's back to the Montoya that we all know and recognize.
Impressive. You know, he's one of the elder statesmen in this series right now, 39
Great work,
years
bud.
old.
Great work. Good job. Good job, buddy. Show them what we're going to do this year.
No question, Montoya is very elated after this win, huh, Doc?
Absolutely. And Roger, your thoughts on the impressive performance by Team Penske this weekend?
Well, I'll tell you, it was a fight with our 2 guys up front there. I mean, it was just an amazing weekend. Guys worked hard during the winter, the new aero kits. Thanks for Chevrolet and Verizon for the support. But to come back this year with the fast times there on qualifying day and to win this race, finish 1-2 in the top 6, wow, what a day.
I know there are never team orders, but what goes through your mind when you see your 2 guys battling and they have contact like that?
Well, we said at the beginning, let's take care of ourselves, but at the end, they got to go racing. And I think you saw that Will was trying to get by, and Juan didn't want him by. So I'm sure they understand that, and we'll just move on to the next race. But a great day for all the people at Team Penske.
Team Penske finishing 4 in the top 5.
Team Penske led
That's
all.
for a season start, bud.
Team Penske led all but 5 laps in this race today between its 4 drivers. Will Power 75, Montoya 27, Simon Pagenaud 2, Elio Castroneves 1. Only Jack Hawksworth got in the way of their parade at the front of the field, with the 5 circuits led on various exchanges of pit stops. Impressive.
I would say they've done their homework properly. Roger Penske is America's version of Enzo Ferrari.
How about this one? I like this. First win in an IndyCar on a road course since Vancouver, 1999 for Juan Pablo Montoya.
Wow.
After having done such a long stint in NASCAR.
So he's 1 in NASCAR, 1 in Formula 1, 1 in IndyCar.
And let's not forget that Penske just won the Daytona 500. So he might be starting one of his dominant periods. Definitely off to a good start when it comes to 2015. Great champion.
Get better at qualifying. All of our testing that we did, although it was short, you know, Brian, Campy, and Juan really worked hard.
Columbia will be celebrating tonight.
Make the changes necessary to get that done. A real testament to Juan out there. Kind of.
I expect this to be a very lively,
He understands.
livelier than normal.
It's great win.
Montoya, we hear from here in just a moment. Here he comes, the race winner, Juan Pablo Montoya.
Perfect day for Team Penske, 4 of the top 5.
Looks like he can go out and do it again.
Kanan being the only one to interrupt that. Tony Kanan came home in third. It's Montoya, Power, Kanan, Casper Neves, Consno.
I don't think I've seen Juan Pablo Montoya smile this wide in a long time. Juan Pablo, what a performance, what a day. We talked earlier and you said I had to be so patient a year ago, not today. Take us through your run.
No, it was a good day, to be honest with you. I mean, I was really good in black tires, and I think that was the key. On reds, tires weren't going off. At least they went off at the beginning, so afterwards, like when running there at the end, I was just running slow just to look after them. And when I needed to push, I could push and open the gap to wheel. But, you know, everybody at Verizon and Team Penske did an amazing job, Chevy as well. You know, this Aero kit is amazing to drive.
What about the contact? Could you see Will Power trying to make the move underneath you there with the mirrors and where he was?
I mean, I saw him try to make the move, but he was way too back, you know, way too far, and I wasn't going to give him the position. If he was beside me, you know, go ahead. But I know when I got to the turning point, he wasn't even close. So it's a shame we touched, but it's all good. It's racing.
Juan Pablo Montoya wasn't going to give him the position, and indeed he didn't, and he ends up in victory lane at St. Petersburg. Alan?
Nice work.
Celebrating with the team. What will be a very popular win as Montoya takes the trophy at St. Pete.